Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We'll go ahead and start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. I want to welcome everyone to the program. We do apologize for the late start. Just so you have a little bit of an idea of the how this will be scheduled. We will start with some introductory remarks, break for Maghrib, and then resume, inshallah, till Isha prayer. So we will be breaking in about half an hour to pray Maghrib, inshallah. And what we will do, I just want everyone, this is the only time I'll ask you to take your phones out, but I have a slide here that says sharing is khairing. So this is a patented, trademarked expression that if you use it, you have to give me royalties on. But if you share that link, inshallah, celebratemercy.com/Tennessee, that link will give people access to watch this online live. They can go ahead, they'll just put in their email, it'll redirect them to a YouTube live stream of tonight's program, and people watching online will be able to ask questions a bit later in the program too, inshallah. And this flyer, which we are about to post on Facebook and Twitter, you can also share, which has the same link on it, inshallah. So we will go ahead and ask our local Hafiz, Omar al-Sharif. I don't know if I should call you Dr. Omar yet. Not yet? Okay, about to start residency. Inshallah, Dr. Omar, go ahead and lead us with an opening Quran recitation before we begin, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لقد صدق الله رسوله الرؤيا بالحق لتدخلن المسجد الحرام إن شاء الله آمنين إن شاء الله آمنين محلقين رؤوسكم ومقصرين لا تخافون فعلم ما لم تعلموا فجعل من دون ذلك فتحا قريبا هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا محمد رسول الله محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود ذلك مثلهم في التوراة ومثلهم في الإنجيل كزرع أخرج شطأه فآزره فاستغلظ فاستوى على سوقه يعجب الزراع ليغيظ بهم الكفار وعد الله الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات منهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakumullah khair. Inshallah, we will go ahead and begin. And if you missed it the first time, please make sure to share the link for tonight's program, inshallah. So, first of all, we know why we're here. I mean, these programs that we take around the country, including here in my hometown, are here to increase the love and knowledge of the Prophet ﷺ and his character, because you can't love someone that you don't know. And that's the whole premise behind our programs, alhamdulillah. And to start off, we just want to thank some of the people who helped make this possible, some of the organizations that helped make this possible. First and foremost, this class began here in Knoxville, actually, about a year and a half ago, with Ustadha Zaynab Ansari. And this is very hard to follow up Ustadh Usama, especially now that he's been diagnosed with a terminal illness. So we just want to ask everyone here if we can all pause and recite the Fatiha for Allah to cure him and to be there for his family and give them patience, inshallah. Fatiha. Some of us here were fortunate enough to be in Chicago not too long ago and spend some time with Ustadh Usama there and greet him. And he actually gave a public talk where he mentioned that this is the first masjid where he ever gave a khutbah, actually a Friday khutbah, was in Knoxville. So this was a picture from his khutbah actually here when he came about a year and a half ago. And as Shaykh Ubaydullah was saying that the Prophet ﷺ literally gave people the shirts off their back, he actually gave me that thobe right after the khutbah.
Allahu Akbar.
So we want to thank the Muslim community of Knoxville, obviously, for hosting this, the board and the volunteers who helped bring this program here to the masjid. MashaAllah, I wanted to ask Sister Reem, who not only represents MCK, but wears two hats with An-Nur Academy, to say a couple of words for a few seconds, she said. So why don't you come on up, Reem, inshallah. We also have a couple of other sponsors we're going to mention as well before we get started.
Outside for you guys, and if anybody has questions about Taysir, you can see Rania outside, and if you have any questions, and we have some students as well that are here, and alumni, and if you have any questions about An-Nur Academy, I'll be happy to answer those, and we have an open house on Tuesday for parents, so we would love to see everybody there, and we hope everyone has a great weekend, and very big welcome to Shaykh Ubaydullah. We're really happy to have you with us, inshallah, and he'll also be speaking at the Taysir graduation May 5th, inshallah, so if please be sure to save that date and come for that as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reem. So yes, Shaykh Ubaydullah will be coming back in May for the Taysir graduation, so we want everyone to be there. And we're also hoping we can bring him again to Knoxville for a program similar to what we did for kids, actually, in Arizona. So we got to talk about that at some point. that was a very difficult program.
That's news to me.
Yeah, we're actually trying to do a little bit of fundraising to try to make that happen, so that Shaykh Ubaydullah, another teacher, and a munshid, nasheed singer, can do an all-day program with the kids, An-Nur Academy kids, but also public and private school kids in Knoxville, an all-day Seerah Day program, inshallah. It was very successful in Arizona, but we're trying to hopefully do a little bit of fundraising so that we can make that happen, hopefully, inshallah. And we also want to thank one of our sponsors, University Islamic Financial, and I think Brother Wissam. Where is Brother Wissam? He is right there. Please come to the front and introduce University on the mic. I just want to introduce you to the group. He came in from Jersey, right?
The big state of New Jersey.
Yes. I never liked New Jersey until I married someone from New Jersey.
Smart man, smart man, smart man.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Wissam with University Islamic Financial. It is a pleasure to be here along with Brother Tariq and all the wonderful things that he does, especially with all that goes on across the country about Islam and the Deen. It's important for us to learn not just about the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but also to implement it. Right? What good is it to know something is good for you, but not actually to implement it to benefit from it? Inshallah. So may Allah accept from all of our actions. Jazakallah khair. Wassalamu alaikum. I see. Okay. So I'm also supposed to quickly introduce our company real quick. University Islamic Financial provides Sharia compliant home financing as well. So if you're looking to purchase a home in a Sharia compliant manner, please let me know. I'll pass around my cards as well. Our program is a very simple program, which is basically based on the Murabaha model, which is a marked up sale. So you find a home, negotiate the price, we purchase it, resell it to you at a higher price, and break up the payment equally over a period of time. House is 100,000, we purchase it for 100,000, resell it to you for let's say 120,000, break up the payments equally over 10 years, for example, and you pay us back in installments. Marked up installment sale, you are 100% owner of the property from day one. You can do anything you want with the home, sell it at a profit, rent it out, and so on. You keep all of that. We have a great group of independent Sharia scholars that have reviewed and approved the programs to make sure that it is Sharia compliant. Our brother Tariq did not introduce me as Sheikh Wissam or Maulana Wissam. He just said Wissam Berjawi. So we do have a great group of scholars that have reviewed and approved the program. Also, some people might think Islamic finance is more expensive. Alhamdulillah, with us it is not. If you compare us to the larger players out there in the market, you'll see that our payments are competitive out there, because we all know everybody's Sharia compliant, right, until it costs $1 more. So with us, we try not to give that excuse. And last but not least, we've been doing this for many years, so we will handhold you throughout the process. So make sure that all that anxiousness that goes into purchasing a home, we'll also guide you through those paperwork that is needed, inshallah, to make it as smooth as possible. Once again, my name is Wissam with University Islamic Financial. Jazakallah khair for your time. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
And he has a table outside, so if you want more information, you can check with him, inshallah. He'll be here tonight and tomorrow, inshallah, and he has some business cards as well. Lastly, in terms of sponsors, we have the Fawakih Institute. And I wanted to announce something pretty exciting here. I have a 1-minute video to show you, but before I show that 1-minute video, we are starting an online Arabic course along with Fawakih Institute for kind of a beginner's level Arabic. So people who at least either with ease or with difficulty can already read the Quran with ease or difficulty. This is meant to be a class, inshallah, that will teach Quranic Arabic. It's an online course, so people attend a weekly online class with their teacher who comes live on their webcam. It's interactive, so students are interacting, asking questions. They can see the lessons on the screen. And we started this recently with a group in Portland, Oregon, after a program we did there. And we're going to be starting it, inshallah, with them again. This starts in Ramadan. And I actually attended some of these sessions. I found them really interesting, very interactive. And so I wanted to show you this quick video. We have flyers about this that you may have seen outside too.
Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. And there are other parts of the Quran where Allah does say some form of hidayah with ila. But in Surah Fatiha here He doesn't. Right? And this word ila is a word we take for granted in level 1. We learned it the first day of class. You learn the word ila. But it's not there. When you start to learn Arabic, you start to pick up things that you did not ever realize before. Whether something is there or it's not there.
The deeper you go into Nahu or Sarf, the more you understand about Hadith. deeper you go into hadith, the more you understand about Quran. The deeper you go into Quran, you start to see ayat and the surahs of the Quran are like the night sky. Like all of these stars splattered onto the night sky. And at first it's overwhelming. But eventually people start noticing patterns. Then they start noticing shapes and they start connecting.
So these class sizes are pretty small, 20 seats available, like it said. And for those who are interested, we have some pre-registration forms. And this will start Sunday, May 20th. So Sunday early afternoon in Ramadan, there'll be like 3 sessions, and then it will move to Monday nights. This is a year-long program, weekly classes. Each class is about 2 to 3 hours long. And literally after the first few sessions, people have said as they're reciting Quran, they're starting to unlock the meanings. And even in Ramadan, as you're attending Taraweeh, you're reading the Quran, you'll start to understand many of the words you're reading as well. So we hope, inshallah, that if you have any questions, you can talk to me about this, inshallah. But it will start in Ramadan. And those who do register this weekend will also get one of the months will be free of cost. So there's a monthly fee, but 1 month will be free if you sign up this weekend, inshallah. So without any further delay, inshallah, we're going to go ahead and go into our first hadith. Oh, I do want to mention one thing, is that unfortunately tonight conflicted with Shaykh Hassan's daughter's birthday, and it's very hard to get him to leave his daughter on her birthday, as I learned tonight.
Good man, good man, good man.
So inshallah, he will be joining us tomorrow, but that just means we'll have some extra time, inshallah, with Ustadha Zaynab, with Shaykh Ubaydullah, and also some extra Q&A tonight, inshallah. So we apologize for that, but he will be joining us tomorrow morning for the program, inshallah. So I will now turn it over to Shaykh Ubaydullah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فمن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم. It is indeed a great honor, a great privilege to be here with you this evening. The Knoxville community, mashallah, is from among the most hospitable and beautiful communities that I've been privileged to serve at. Mashallah, we prayed Jum'ah here this afternoon, and I was so impressed with how warm and brotherly and sisterly I found the community. I'm also very honored to share this platform with Ustadha Zaynab Ansari, who actually, she doesn't know this, but led to me having something of a crisis as a teacher. She joined us for the Alam Winter Program in California, and the presentation was so thorough, it was so thought-provoking, it was so inspiring that I looked and said, I don't know what I've been doing for the last 5 years, but I haven't been teaching Islam. If that's what teaching Islam is, I don't know what I've been doing with my life. But mashallah, I've forgiven her for that. It was a worthwhile reflection that I needed to do. And it's a great honor to be here in Knoxville. Mashallah, I esteem the work that Taysir Seminary is doing. It is always a great privilege to speak on the platform that Celebrate Mercy offers. We've come here this weekend to discuss character. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ said, وَمَا بُعِثْتُ إِلَّا أَنْ أُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was only sent, and in Arabic grammar, this form is known as hasr, restriction. The only reason I was dispatched. Are we stopping for Maghrib?
It is Maghrib, yes.
Subhanallah. Well, everything should stop.
That was a teaser then.
Okay. 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 Bismillah.
Is there someone here that can make adhan and then we'll resume? I didn't realize it was so early actually.
Let's call it like this. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
So we'll go ahead and pray and then resume inshallah right after the share. Okay, we will go ahead and resume, inshallah. We have a long stretch of time now, so we will go ahead and resume with the program, with the introduction, and then move on to, we are only doing one hadith tonight, and we have 9 tomorrow. So 9 is a very full day of programming, inshallah. So we are going to cover one. It is a long hadith tonight, and there's a lot of things you can unpack, beautiful lessons from it. But inshallah, tonight will be an intro, hadith 1, and the rest of the 9 hadith tomorrow, inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وبعد. السلام عليكم. So before we conclude it for Salat al-Maghrib, I was mentioning the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَمَا بُعِثْتُ إِلَّا أَنْ أُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, that I was only sent to perfect or to dictate noble traits of character. And we were mentioning that this is the Arabic grammatical form known as hasr, or restriction. This restricts the reason for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam being sent to us as the perfection of noble or honorable traits of character. That means that the Muhammadan gift to the world is the instruction in character. MashaAllah, for Salat al-Maghrib, our brother beautifully recited هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله, from Surah At-Tawbah. It is He that sent His messenger with guidance and the religion of truth to make it prevail over all other ways of life. Now, the great misfortune, and this has been a destructive misfortune, of Muslims in our time is that we interpret this preeminence as a social-political or even military preeminence, that Islam has to be socially and politically and militarily dominant. But that is not true. One only needs to look at our history to know that Muslims have not always been politically or socially or militarily dominant. This ayah is talking about what? The triumph of our faith as something that transforms the conduct of human beings. And for me, this takes me back to my very beginning as someone interested in Islam. I was 16 years of age when I first started exploring Islam. And like so many other people, my madkhal, my entry into Islam, was reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, who I am convinced is a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think that his karama, or the miracle associated with him, is how many people have been deeply impacted and affected by his life story. People from different backgrounds, different walks of life, different ethnicities, different ages. There's something in that story. And I still remember reading it as a youth, being completely wrapped in the narrative. And I asked myself, what was it about his story? And I think it was because it laid out for us a tale of human transformation. That a person started as one thing and became something else. In his autobiography, Malcolm talks about being a junkie. He was addicted to heroin. He talks about being a womanizer. He talks about being a thief. He talks about being a gangster. And then his life ends with him making Hajj, coming back, continuing his work, fighting for justice on behalf of under-resourced, marginalized communities, and ultimately losing his life in that pursuit. And I think that as a young man, it captured my attention because it suggested to me that I too could change. And when you look at the people around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have many tales of transformation, none perhaps greater than that of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. A person that by his own testimony was on his way to committing the most heinous crime that anyone in humanity can commit. What crime was that? To kill the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now he's someone after whom we name our children Zishan. This is Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. This is someone, and there is some debate about the provenance or about the historical veracity of this account, but nonetheless it serves a purpose. Some people would see Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu walking around the streets of Medina. This is when he was the Khalifa. The report goes that sometimes he would be weeping and sometimes he would be laughing. And Sayyidina Umar was a redoubtable person. He was a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Redoubtable is too, he was very, and domineering has a negative connotation. He was intimidating. He was bold. He was intrepid. So if you were going to ask him a revealing question, one had to get up some gumption to do that. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu was one of those people, you know, this is a peculiar habit. I want to ask him, but I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I won't ask him. So they had to get up some gumption. And someone said, Ya Umar, I have a question for you. Why is it that sometimes we see you weeping, walking by yourself, and sometimes we see you laughing, walking by yourself? And he said, you really want to know? They said, yes. He said, when you see me laughing, it's because I'm remembering this idol that I used to worship. You know, I used to prostrate to this idol. I used to worship this idol. But the idol was made out of dates. And if no one was looking, and I got hungry, you know, while I was doing, you know, all of this worship and adoration, I would just take a piece of the idol, eat it, and just keep on worshiping. And when I think about that, it's so silly that I could consider as my God something I could consume, that it makes me laugh. But when you see me weeping, it is because I remember having a daughter. And I took her out into the desert. This is the practice of female infanticide. And I buried her alive. And then he said, she was of age. Because as I was digging her grave and the sand was getting into my beard, she was cleaning the sand out of my beard. How could I have been so cruel? How could I have been so insensitive that I would kill my own daughter? And he went from that to becoming Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, somebody concerning whom, when you talk about the depth of his sensitivity, and Umar is often maligned in Muslim communities. We see people doing things unconscionable, behaving rudely, behaving in an unmannerly way. And they say, yeah, I'm like Umar. No, you're like Shaitan. You're not like Umar. Yani Shaitan al-Mutamarrid. It's not like Umar. Sayyidina Umar became someone whose sensitivity had reached depths where if someone told him that an animal stumbled on an unpaved road in Medina, he would fear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to take him to account for that. Now, where did he learn that? Bismillah. Can everyone hear me? This is how he became who he became. So we know that this feature of personal transformation and refinement of character was central in the Prophet's ministry, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Unfortunately, it is not always central in how we instruct in the deen in our religious communities. MashaAllah, at 16, I embraced Islam. And I still remember my first day entering a masjid. It was a scary experience. For one, I saw men wearing very long robes. And they looked like people in the Watchtower Society of Jehovah's Witnesses would come by my neighborhood like passing out tracts. And they always had like artistic depictions of scenes from the Bible. And you'd have people wearing robes and something that looked like a imam, like a turban. And when I went to the masjid, I said, hey, those guys are dressed like the people in the Jehovah's Witnesses tracts. This is interesting. And it was really the beginning of an odyssey. And when I think back to being a tender 16-year-old, entering this community for the first time, a community that was very foreign to me, a community that at the time was kind of inaccessible to me. I still remember going to the masjid and I didn't know anything about how to pray. But the motto is, if you've never been there, act like you've been there before. So I just stood next to the brother. He was praying his sunnah. Now, funny story, just to lighten the mood a little bit. I assumed, I saw a Muslim somewhere. I said, I'm Muslim too. Where can I pray? They said, Friday prayer. And they gave me an address. And I showed up at 9 a.m. because I assumed that it was like church. This was a Friday that we had off of school. And I had on my best. I had on my Sunday's best. And I'm sitting in the parking lot. And I still remember when it got to be maybe 10, I said, maybe it was Thursday. He said, no. I distinctly remember him saying Friday. So I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait. Jumu'ah started at 1:15. People started to arrive at about, right, somebody said 2. People started to arrive at about 12:30. An older Desi gentleman came up to me and said, are you in the right place? And I said, this is the mosque, right? He said, yes, this is the mosque. Well, I'm in the right place. This is where I want to be. He said, when did you get here? I said, I got here at 9 a.m. And then this beautiful man, he said, well, there's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I didn't know what he was talking about. I thought that sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the Prophet's last name. There's this hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I was like, okay, I know Muhammad, I don't know sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That people that come to Jumu'ah are like people making sacrifice. The first person that gets there gets the reward of a camel, then a cow, all the way down to the last person that gets the reward of an egg. He said, today you got the big, big one. And I was very pleased at that. MashaAllah. I got the big, big one. And so we went in, and I saw him making salah. And so I just stood next to him. Even though he was praying, maybe Tahiyyat al-Masjid or Sunnah, I just stood right next to him, and I just was like clearly looking at him doing whatever he did. Right? But every time we would go into sujood, I would put my hands all the way out like I saw in movies. Right? And afterward, he said to me, brother, we're not swimming. We're praying. And then he gave me a book called The Prophet's Prayer Made Easy. And this is significant. I'm not telling you this just to humor you. This was my introduction to the Shar'iyat. This was my introduction to this idea that things have to be done in a certain way. In the next maybe 10 years of my Islam, with some blameworthy excess, was the 10 years of what I would call ta'zeem al-sharia, where we became very focused on the outward shara. Very focused. I still remember him giving me that book, my looking in it and thinking to myself, this is so different than my Christian religious experience. You actually have to do this in a particular way. Certain things must be said at certain times. And I learned about the concept of sunnah. Unfortunately, sunnah, for many of the people I was learning with, was restricted to the madhar of sunnah, how you wore your clothes. The fact that you ate with your middle finger, your index finger, and your thumb. That you would lie recumbent on your right side. This is what I thought of when I thought of sunnah. It wasn't until maybe being in Egypt, attending Azhar to study Sharia, that someone said to me, don't forget the deeper inward aspect of the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he said, when it comes to our salah, if we make a mistake within it, we have sajdatul sahu. We have a prayer for forgetfulness. And then he said to me, but the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man kana inda qalbihi mithqalu dharratin min al-kibr, la yadkhulu al-jannah." Whoever has even an atom's weight of arrogance in their heart will not enter paradise. What's the sahu for that? What do you do for that? So which one has a lower margin of error? You can make the prayer. You can make a mistake. And you can amend that mistake by making sajda to sahu. If you have an atom's weight of arrogance in your heart, there is nothing you can do but work on that arrogance to rid yourself of it. And he gave me the rest of the hadith in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as soon as he said this, a man said to him, Ya Rasulullah, ولكن الرجل يحب لثوبه أن يكون حسنا ولنعله أن يكون حسنا هل هذا من الكبر? But a man loves that his clothes are nice and that his shoes are nice. Is this what you mean by kibr? Is this what you mean by arrogance? And the Prophet ﷺ said, La, inna Allah jameel wa yuhibbul jamal. No, nice clothes, nice shoes. This is not from arrogance. Thank God. Alhamdulillah. Thank God for that man. Radiallahu anhu. Saved my life. Radiallahu anhu. This is not from arrogance. ولكن الكبر غمت الناس وبطر الحق. Looking down on people. and rejecting the truth when it comes to you. Now, how many of us have that issue? I remember distinctly Imam al-Ghazali saying one of the signs, he said this in Bidayatul Hidayah, that one is making progress on the spiritual path is that they don't encounter anybody that they deem themselves superior to. If they see someone older than them, mashallah, this person has more good deeds than I do. If they see someone younger than them, this person does not have the sin that I do. He said, hatta, even a non-Muslim, huwa ya'asi Allah an jahlin ana a'asihi an ilm. This person disobeys Allah and they don't know any better. I disobey Allah and I know better. Who am I better than? Then he said, batrul haq, rejecting the truth when it comes to you. Now, many of us, thinking about the truth in kind of meta terms, meaning the truth with a capital T, all of us, inshallah, have accepted the truth of the prophecy of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But if you think about lesser truths, say someone comes to you and they say you wronged me or you offended me, do we possess the humility to say, I acknowledge that offense. I'm sorry about what I did to you? Or do we immediately go into some exculpating explanation? No. Some of us, we try to apologize, but not really apologize. I'm sorry that your feelings are hurt. What does that mean? I'm not acknowledging any wrongdoing, but I'm acknowledging that you have taken offense to something that I've done. This is batar. The humble person is the one that can say without reservation, I'm sorry for what I've done if I've done something wrong. Where will we learn to acquire these states if not from watching the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, emulating him in the fullness of his sunnah? And this, as I was mentioning before, is the great Muhammadan gift. If you look at the writings of many behavioralists, classical and contemporary, many of them suggest that the human being is formed in their formative years between the ages of maybe 2 and 9. And what happens there cannot be changed. So that if a child is ridiculed by a parent or a teacher, that person or that child will grow into an insecure adult. And there's nothing that can be done about that. They say that if someone dealt with food insecurity as a child, it will be or even poverty, that person will become maybe something like a hoarder or something like that. And there's nothing that can be done about that. It's just who they are. And in the person of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have someone who came to remove these aghlal, to remove these yokes, to remove these chains from us, so that we can be free to be beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I was giving the khutbah earlier, and I was mentioning something that I recently learned from, mashallah, a new friend of mine, Dr. Bilal Ware, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he says, and I totally butchered this at Jummah, I hope I don't do it now. Whenever you find Allah ta'ala saying he loves something, Inna Allah yuhib or Allah yuhib, in the Quran, the thing that follows that, the direct object of his love, is always a trait of character that can be embodied by human beings. Allah Ta'ala says that he loves the muttaqeen, so he loves taqwa. There are 7 of them. and he loves qist, and he loves ihsan. So he loves taqwa. He loves that we revere him. He loves taqwa, that we revere him. He loves ihsan. He loves spiritual excellence. He loves qist, equity. He loves tawakkul, or that we rely on him. He loves tahara. He loves purity. He loves ihsan. Or did I say ihsan? I said ihsan. He loves sabr. He loves patience. And he loves tawbah. And he loves repentance. These 7 traits of character are the only things that Allah Ta'ala mentions that he loves in the Quran. And the reason that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the Habib of Allah is because he is the fullest and most perfected embodiment of all of those traits of character. And if we follow him, we can similarly be loved by God. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهِ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبُكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ. Say, if you love Allah, then follow me. Follow the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And if you do so, the result will be, right, the jawab al-shart, or the jawab al-talab. The talab is, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهِ فَاتَّبِعُونِي. This is the talab, فَاتَّبِعُونِي. The answer to the talab, يُحْبِبُكُمُ اللَّهِ. Allah will love you. If you follow the Prophet ﷺ, Allah will love you. But we have to follow the Prophet ﷺ in the entirety of his sunnah. Not simply its outward aspects. Its inward aspects and its outward aspects. So mashallah, it is absolutely beautiful to wear white, especially on Jum'ah. But that is much easier than controlling your temper. You see? It's much easier to wear white than it is to deal with your jealousy. It's much easier to eat with your right hand than it is to deal with your envy. It is much easier to kneel when taking a drink than to lower the humility to people in your midst so that all of them feel validated and ingratiated by you. This is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we must adhere to if we want to earn that divine love. I'll say one more thing and then I'll pass to Ustadha Zaynab and we can prepare to actually go into the first hadith of this collection. We really have to focus on bringing some love back into Islam. We have to focus on bringing love back into Islam. You know, I was once giving a khutbah and I was talking about love. And after the khutbah, someone said to me, you know, Imam, the khutbah was okay, but it was kind of like Sufi stuff. And I said, in what way? Well, you were talking about love. And I said, Muslims don't talk about love. It's California Islam to talk about love. A man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said to him, Ya Rasulullah, mata sa'ah. O Messenger of God, when is the day of judgment? I'm hearing so much about it. Mountains rent asunder. Children becoming gray-haired. Women delivering prematurely. When is all of this going to happen? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as he was wont to do, he posed a question to that man, ماذا أعدت لها? What have you prepared for it? That man responded with honesty. He said, what have I prepared for it? Not a whole lot in terms of my prayer. Not a whole lot in terms of my fasting. Not a whole lot in terms of my sadaqah. وَلَكِنَّنِي أَعْرِفُ شَيْئًا. But I do know one thing. إِنِّي أُحِبُّ اللَّهَ وَأُحِبُّ الرَّسُولَ. I know that I love God and I love His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet alayhi wasallam said, الْمَرْءُ مَعَ مَنْ أَحَبْ. Or in another riwayah, أَنْتَ مَعَ مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. A man, and by extension a woman, will be with those whom they love. And you will be with those whom you love, in another recension of this hadith. So how does it become something secondary, something tertiary, something Sufi, something Californian, to talk about love in our religion? I talk to Muslims all over the country. And many of them are hurting because they don't feel love in the Muslim community. Most people who leave Islam don't leave because they've discovered that no, there's not one God, there's two. That doesn't normally happen. It's that the Muslim community has become a very inhospitable place, a very unsafe place. And I'm thinking, how does this happen? Except through neglect of the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'll close with this. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was once exiting his home, and he saw a man preparing to slaughter a goat, and the goat was laying on its side. The man had his foot on the goat like this, and he was sharpening the blade with which he was going to perform the slaughter. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Hal turidu an tadbahahu marratayn?" Do you want to kill the animal twice? And the man looked up at him, confusedly and perplexed. Huh? You're sharpening the blade with which you are going to take its life right in front of the animal. What do you think this is doing to the animal? I read that and I broke down in tears. I said, this is what Allah means when He says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. This is what God means when He says, we have not sent you except as a mercy to everything that exists. This man is concerned about the psychological suffering of animals on their way to the slaughter. We say that we're living His sunnah and we're not even concerned about living human beings. We have to get back to this deep, thorough, comprehensive understanding of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The revivification of our community will only come through reviving the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But it has to start with the qalb. It has to start with the inward. And then all of the beauty that comes from that will manifest outwardly. We are here this weekend to discuss the qalb and to discuss that inward. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Ustadha Zaynab, do you have something to add, inshallah? Oh, you have your own mic. Oh, okay, sure. MashaAllah. I get to effectively pass the mic. I want to pass it to Ustadha myself.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيد المرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه أجمعين. اللهم لك الحمد حق حمدك كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك ولعظيم سلطانك سبحانك لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Assalamu alaikum. I have to say, I would much rather be in the audience as opposed to speaking. Shaykh Ubaydullah is too kind when he mentioned the Alim program. And I wanted to say this, Shaykh Ubaydullah, that the Alim program, quite honestly, when I always kind of looking at the announcements and flyers and descriptions, I was always thinking, okay, that would be really nice to attend as a student. So, Jazakum Allah kul khair. I've really enjoyed attending. It's an excellent program, ya Jama'ah. I really encourage everybody to look into the Alim program. And I really want to convey my thanks to Sidi Tariq and the Celebrate Mercy team. You know, when I was coming up, the way we studied Sirah was really just through the medium of books. I mean, we read books about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, there was the only epic film made about the Prophet's life, Ar-Risala, right, the message. So, you know, our way of kind of engaging with, interacting with the Sirah was through, you know, it was through the written word. And I just really want to say that this is a blessing that we should not take lightly, right? That we should not dismiss, that we are able to get this glimpse into the beautiful seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his life story, through sitting with Shaykh Ubaydullah, who studied at Al-Azhar. And I really wanted to mention how blessed we are to have that opportunity. There was, when I was studying in Damascus, there was a school that some people went to where their final year they actually got to do at Al-Azhar. So we need to make sure that we honor and respect and really benefit from the learning and experience of our mashayikh. May Allah Ta'ala reward you and your family. But my point about this seerah and Celebrate Mercy, again, the blessing of having this type of platform, this type of venue, I think it's really remarkable. Because in this, quite honestly, in this day and age, it's not always easy to sit down and go through a book from cover to cover. The other day, in our Islam in the West class at the seminary, we were looking at some research, some data some research that's been done on Muslims in this country and the data that they, the findings that they arrived at as a result of their research. And I'll mention that in a second, but there was a study that they did also on the number of adults, right? The number of adults in this country, the percentage of adults who've actually read a book, right? Who've read a book in the last year. And the results were not very sort of, very heartening, right? The percentage of adults who in the past year had actually managed to read a book or part of a book, and this is in any format, right? Whether we're talking about an actual book as in pages and a book that you open or an ebook, the percentage was really quite low. And there was a clear sort of divide between people who lived in urban areas and people who lived in rural communities. I was actually, this was counterintuitive for me. It was interesting to note that actually a greater percentage of younger people had read a book versus an older population. So I wasn't expecting to see that. But you know, I'm mentioning this study, right, to make the point that, you know, it is increasingly difficult to sit down with a text, a book. And that was the way that when I was coming up, that most of us actually learned about the Prophet's story, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We read books. We read books of biography, seerah. We read hadith books, right? Maybe if we were fortunate enough to have someone to sit and study with or to go to a lecture, or, you know, in those days you actually had something, you young people have never heard of this, but something called an audio cassette, and you'd put it in something called a tape player. Yeah. And you'd listen, you know, to these stories about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I just really want to say I love this venue, this setting of actually sitting down and celebrating the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam through this particular format. So I would really encourage everybody here to look into the offerings of Celebrate Mercy and to support Celebrate Mercy. This is very important to keep this project going. So to the many beneficial points and insightful points that Shaykh Ubaydullah made, I wanted to talk about, there are two things that I want to talk about here. This idea of transformation occurring by virtue of actually being in the presence of, in the company of, actually sort of sharing suhbah, companionship with someone of good character. And I really want to emphasize this point. And inshallah, I'm sure that Shaykh Ubaydullah will come back to this point over the weekend. You know, that's one of the things when you read books, these books of seerah, right? And sometimes you come away with the sense that it's just sort of one campaign, right? One battle after another. And, you know, I think that one of the things about that narrative that we have to be really sort of aware and kind of even critical of, in the sense that if we really think, right, that Islam in this historical context spread the way it did and affected people's hearts the way it did because the Muslims won various campaigns or engaged in various battles or skirmishes, I think we're really misreading seerah. Now, the early biographers of the Prophet ﷺ were very much interested in how he fought those campaigns. This was an interesting topic to them, and it makes sense, right? In this particular age, you know, the borders of the Islamic polity were expanding, so it would have made sense to have really focused on that aspect of the seerah, military and political, and so on. But we really have to make sure that we take another look at seerah, and this is why I love this particular type of platform or venue, because there are so many stories, even in the midst of those very battles and skirmishes and military engagements themselves, even in the midst of that, there are so many stories of human interaction and engagement and transformation, where someone, for example, is there was a group. This is towards the end of the Prophet's mission, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in Medina, right? This is kind of when he is kind of consolidating, you know, his authority over the peninsula, and there was one particular clan or tribe, kind of a base, really sort of not a tribe, but kind of a clan or a sub-clan, and they were kind of the last holdouts, and you know, they actually, one of their intention was to actually kind of take the Muslims by surprise and launch an attack on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And the sort of the group that he left Medina with, right? This kind of like scouting group. But the point is that this person whose intention was enmity and hostility, right? He had some type of interaction with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that interaction completely changed his mind about the Prophet. Peace and blessings be upon him. And you see that happen time and time again, where someone who is not at all predisposed to accepting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who actually decided that it was their opportunity to kind of rid Arabia of this person and his presence, that when they meet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they declare their shahada on the spot. I mean, this is not something that can happen at the point of a sword. It's impossible. And so this is why I really want to emphasize this point, that we should really read the seerah with a view of accessing those stories of personal transformation. All right? Because as the Prophet himself recognized, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we don't know what is contained within a person's heart, right? And in an instant, Allah Ta'ala can enact change and transformation in that person's heart. You know, we were having this debate the other day in our seerah class, talking about some of the sort of elite of Mecca, some of these, the people who are the last holdouts, they become Muslim when the writing is on the wall, so to speak. And, you know, it's very tempting to sort of question their motivation. Was it because of this, was it, you know, was there some type of sort of expediency for them you know, in becoming Muslim at this point? Was it because they recognized that sort of the arc of history was kind of bending in the direction of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Like, what was their motivation, right? the people like Abu Sufyan ibn Harb, for example. And and it's tempting again to sort of account for this person's conversion, from the standpoint of politics or economics or whatever, or just sort of political pressure in these kinds of conversations. But I don't think that we can diminish and dismiss the role of that sort of evocative, right? That evocative power of the Prophet's character, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because all this time, these very last holdouts, the very last people to become Muslim, they have had an opportunity all this time to really observe the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the context of both war and peace. And I think it's very valid to argue that at the end of the day, that perhaps that there was something about the Prophet's patience and his forbearance and his willingness to really sort of accept people for who they were that motivated them to accept Islam, right? And of course, Allah Ta'ala knows best in terms of what is within people's hearts, right? But I really wanted to mention that point. I want to come back to it, inshallah. Now, the second point is I wanted to say something about gratitude. Because, Shaykh Ubaydullah was listing these various characteristics that these qualities that Allah Ta'ala praises in the Quran as being beloved to him. And then also Shaykh Ubaydullah was making that contrast between, right, the ease of following some of the outward aspects of the Sunnah, right, and the difficulty that we have to sort of, it's very difficult to kind of muster the ability to deal with those inner aspects, right? So, for example, where Shaykh Ubaydullah said it's easy, for example, to have those outer accoutrements, right? But when it comes to that really hard work of reforming the inner, dealing with things like jealousy and arrogance and envy and rancor and all these, diseases of the heart, that's very, very, very difficult indeed. And as he was speaking, I was thinking about the role of shukr, of gratitude, and how I really want us to understand shukr, gratitude, as a central principle guiding the conduct and the manners of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This, if you were to ask me about, what is the single most factor that just really kind of endears me to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and reading his seerah and trying to understand something of the Sunnah, it's the fact that he was able to muster true and sincere thankfulness and gratitude in the most difficult of circumstances. And if Allah Ta'ala would just kind of bless me with a fraction of that ability, I'd be happy for the rest of my life. Because when we are able to sit down and ponder the many blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that if we really took the time to sit down and think about the numerous blessings that we enjoy, that maybe we wouldn't have time to sort of go in the direction of anger or bitterness or resentment or jealousy or any of those negatives. So I really want us to think about how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he really embodied gratitude and shukr and the full richness of being a human being that's totally immersed in love and devotion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, this really is at the heart of this seerah. So I'm so excited about this particular hadith collection, Content of Character. And let me just say this as an aside, if I may, Shaykh Ubaydullah, that, okay. So, so there's this debate about hadith itself, right? And I wanted to mention this because we have this conversation sometimes with our students at the seminary, I know within the Alim program as well, about the role and the relevance of hadith today. And, for me, it's something that I look at in wonderment, and I also kind of shake my head in sort of dismay when I come across people who make these arguments about dispensing with the hadith, right? People make this, I mean, these are people, even some of them consider themselves within some aspect, of Ahl Sunnah who make this argument, right? That i.e. they're not explicitly identifying with other groups, and they make this argument. And, it is such a problematic argument, theologically, intellectually, and I think ethically. Because if we decide that we're going to sort of sift through the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we retain those that we agree with, that accord with our postmodern liberal sensibilities, right? And then we decide we're going to discard the rest, right? What happened? Like, what are we doing there? I mean, that in and of itself, in my view, is an exercise really in kind of arrogance on the one hand and futility on the other, because we're never going to be able to bring to bear any objective sort of set of criteria in terms of which hadith we're going to accept and implement and which ones we're going to discard. And this event, this opportunity to learn, to grow, to become illuminated by this glimpse into the prophetic seerah, right? It would be completely impossible, right, to enjoy this. And apparently there's some notes being set in my direction, so I might want to put these back on. All right. Okay. Okay. Halder, okay. So, this type of event would be completely impossible to benefit from if we had this attitude towards the hadith. Let me ask you this. Where do we derive any ethical framework from to begin with? Right? It's from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, it's about, how to dress and how to eat and enter the masjid with the right foot and all these things these mannerisms, yes. But what about the belief system and the moral framework underlying these practices? We get this from the hadith as well. So I am just very grateful to Shaykh Ubaydullah and the Celebrate Mercy team for reviving this celebration of the hadith. That's very, very important to me, especially as an instructor. So I wanted to mention that. So I've been given a couple of warnings. The first one I ignored because I wasn't wearing my glass. That's probably why I took the glasses off, so I wouldn't see the notice. But alhamdulillah. So those were a couple reflections on your beautiful presentation. Jazakumullah khair.
So I believe, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Oh, you want me to hold the mic? Is this better? Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, alhamdulillah. Yeah, okay, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So we're about to begin actually reading from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's important to remember that when you're sitting in a majlis of hadith, you are listening to the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَمَا يَنْتِكُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. And he does not speak from caprice. And of all of the sciences, all of the ulum of Islam, the one that was afforded perhaps the greatest degree of ceremony after the recitation of Quran was the study of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's recorded that people would come to the home of the great scholar Malik ibn Anas, radiallahu anh, and if someone asked him a question about a shari'i matter, a question of fiqh, a mas'ala, he would just give them the answer. Is this halal? Is this haram? He would just say yes, no. Usually he would say, did this happen yet? If it didn't happen, then I'm not going to give you a hypothetical. Answers like that. But very casually he would address the questioner. But if someone asked him about a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would say, hold on. Invite them in. Go istahamma, take a full purificatory bath. Put on new clothes or clean clothes. Apply perfume. Burn bukhur. Tell the person, sit down. Look at them and say, Now, we are ready to narrate the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I should have showed up today in a tuxedo, but I didn't. That's the most ceremonial dress in my culture. I would have worn a tuxedo, and really, I should have. I may do that next time. If we're doing hadith, I'm wearing a tux. Black tie, double-breasted 6-on-2. Now we are ready to narrate the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when people commenting on the majalis of hadith of old, they said they were remarkably similar to how the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would sit in his presence. They would sit leaning toward him, gravely serious and almost like statuesque in their stillness. Like tuyur, like birds were perched on their heads, leaning in and listening. And this is how people responded to the majesty that was contained in the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And even though we're removed by some generations, we have access to those words via Senate. And we should be thankful for that. We should be grateful for that, as my colleague Ustadha Zaynab was saying. So, mashallah, you going to read the hadith? Okay, bismillah. عن عبد الله ابن السلام قال لما قدم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المدينة انجفل الناس إليه وقيل قدم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فجئت في الناس لأنظر إليه فلما استبنت وجه رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام عرفت أن وجهه ليس بوجه كذاب. فكان أول شيء تكلم به أن قال يا أيها الناس أفشوا السلام وأطعموا الطعام وصلوا بالليل والناس النيام تدخلوا الجنة بسلام. Also نسيل الأرحام. That's what I was going for. Bismillah. Abdullah ibn Salam said, when the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam arrived in Medina, the people rushed to gather, and I was among the people who first arrived to see him. When I first saw his face, I knew that this could not be the face of a liar. The first words that I heard the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam say were, O people, spread peace, feed one another, maintain family ties, and pray at night while others are asleep. You will then enter paradise in peace. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The first thing that I want you to focus on with regard to this hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that Abdullah ibn Salam radiallahu anh, one of the Jewish rabbis of Medina, sees the face of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and immediately he knows this is not the face of a liar. I want you to think about that. What is that? This is not based on something the Prophet said sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This was based on his awe-inspiring presence. And this is something that we've, my teacher, my mentor, Dr. Sherman Jackson, he says, and I'm going to translate it so it'll be in actual English that we can understand. He says that we live in a cult of post-enlightenment genius, where we think that everything that affects us can be worked out in the mind. But the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam does not simply speak to your mind, it also speaks to your heart. And this is one of the reasons why we say sunnah and not ta'alim. We don't say the teachings of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because Even though, mashallah, the Prophet ﷺ, he's the most intelligent of people. His teachings don't simply educate, they inspire. Can I tell you guys like a story that was told to me? Talk about inspiration from the Sunnah. And it's about to get real. This is real stuff. This is like Islam and real life. There was a brother, and he married a woman that had children. And he was really having a difficult time adjusting to being a stepfather. It was a mixture of two things that really grated against him. One, the children were a reminder of an amorous connection she had with another man. When he saw those children, he was reminded that she had a lover before him. And he was now entering the lives of those children as a role model and a provider, in spite of the fact that they were not his children. And for those of you that don't live in blended families, you probably don't realize that it does require a very serious adjustment to get used to. I know because my wife, hafidhahullah, may Allah bless her and preserve her, one of the most intelligent women in the world. And if you see her, make sure you say, I said that. Right? She's a step-parent, and I'm not trying to make the mood somber, just giving you some context. My first marriage ended because my wife passed away in Egypt, Allah yarhamuha. And she's buried there in Maqbara al-Wafa wal-Amal. And I was alone for maybe 3 years. And then, mashallah, Allah blessed me to remarry. But the woman I married, hafidhahullah, she didn't have any children. But I had a daughter from my first marriage. And blended families are tough, man. It requires some very serious commitment to being honest, being open, and dealing with our feelings and our nafs in a very real way. So this brother, he was having difficulty with being a stepfather. And he said that whenever he heard the children call his name, it just, if they were saying, I want some oatmeal, cook us something, we're hungry. It's like, look, I'm not your, I kind of am I'm not your father, but I'm, it's like, look, you're not you are mine. And so my teacher was reading the tafsir of Ibn Kathir. And no, he was reading the seerah of Ibn Kathir. And he came to a part of the seerah where the Prophet ﷺ was speaking to Salama after the martyrdom of Abu Salama at Uhud, radiyallahu anhuma. And he said to Salama, Allah can give you even better than Abu Salama. And she said, what? Who could ever be better than Abu Salama? And the Prophet ﷺ said, well, I am a prophet. Really? And I'm not making, you guys think I'm like putting like a hip-hop translation. No, this is, I am a prophet. And she said, wait, are you suggesting that maybe we could be an item, maybe that we could be married? And the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, this is actually my ishara. This is what I'm saying. And this just blew me away. She said, no, absolutely not. I cannot be married to you. Now pause. This is what differentiates the Prophet ﷺ from every megalomaniacal cult leader. This is a woman that believes that this man receives revelation from the Lord of the heavens and the earth. And she feels completely empowered in his presence to say, you are good enough to be God's messenger, but I don't want you as my husband. And she knows that he will not use his power coercively or irresponsibly. He says what every man who was initially rejected by a woman says. Why not? said, this is my messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. Why not? He didn't say, Allah will not accept your dua. How dare you reject me? I have angels that back me up. How can you? I'm good enough. I'm the Ameen of the one in heaven. How can you reject my proposal? And why not? She said, there are 3 reasons I can't be married to you. 1, you're married to other women, and I'm a very jealous woman. 2, I'm of age, meaning I'm not young. If you're looking for someone young and impressionable that can be molded very easily, that's not me. I'm mature and I'm older. And 3, I have children that I'm caring for. The Prophet ﷺ said, as for your jealousy, Allah will deal with that. Brothers, don't try this. You always have to give that caveat. This is the Prophet ﷺ. You can't do this. I could see some brother's face lighting up. Oh, that's what I'm supposed to say. No. That's the caveat. Don't try this at home. The first part. He said, as for your jealousy, Allah will deal with that. As for the fact that you're mature, I appreciate your maturity. And I too am mature. I'm not young. And as for the fact that you have children, they will be like my children. I will treat them like my babies. My teacher said, he picked up the phone. He called this brother. He listened to this. Just listen to this from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, as soon as the brother heard the hadith, he started weeping. And he said, I feel like the weight of the world has been lifted off of my shoulders. I've talked to counselors. People have, and I'm not disparaging counseling, but he said, I've talked to counselors. People have attempted to offer me self-help books, this, that. But knowing that the Prophet ﷺ could embrace the role of being a stepfather, I know now that I can do it, and there is no loss of face. There is nothing diminished in my masculinity, nothing diminished in me as a person in embracing a woman that has children. This is the inspiration that comes from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. He didn't say anything to him rationally that made him change. It was just that Muhammad ﷺ, he did this, so I can do it. So the fact that Abdullah ibn Salam radiallahu anhu, he sees the Prophet ﷺ and he is inspired by his presence. This is what we want. We want to be inspired by looking at the Prophet ﷺ. So don't just open your mind as you read his ahadith sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Similarly, open your heart. Be inspired. Be inspired by the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. Then he says, the first words I heard him say, Afshu salam, spread peace. The Prophet ﷺ, he begins with salam and he ends with salam. The first instruction, the first wasaya or wasiyah from these wasaya, spread peace. Now the obvious meaning of this is to actually say assalamu alaikum. And the Prophet ﷺ in another hadith actually said, one of the signs of the end of time is that people only give salam to people they know. And we see this sometimes at the masjid. Assalamu alaikum Tariq. Assalamu alaikum Zishan. Assalamu alaikum Ahmed. No. Afshu salam. And the response to assalamu alaikum is wa alaikum assalam. Some people just like blurt out some grumbling combination of syllables. What was that? Wa alaikum assalam. And it's amazing the way that salam, not only can it break ice, salam can melt ice. I'll tell you a story. You know, when I lived in Egypt, there was a bawab, like a doorman. He lived in a utility. he lived in the utility of our building. And we'd be going in and out of the masjid. What? These are the words of the Prophet ﷺ. 10 minutes. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanallah azim. 10 minutes? You know, when they flash these things while you're speaking, it's never to say you're doing great or like good going. It's never. I've never seen somebody flash them and says great going. It's always like 5 minutes. Inshallah khair. I'm gonna get one because I'm a speaker. I'm gonna get one for just the speakers with a big thumb on it, thumbs up, like just to change the flow. But I was in Egypt. And he was the bawab. And in retrospect, I realized that we would go in and out of the building all the time, going to the masjid, coming back, going to the masjid, coming back. And I just don't think we were sensitive enough thinking about his condition and the condition of his family.
What's a bawab?
A doorman. A doorman. But he was living like in a utility, like almost like a closet with his entire family. And people would go in and come out, go in and come out. And I think that this is such a known and acceptable part of Egyptian life that, you know, people really didn't think too much of it. Like all this entire family, he and his wife, Rabi', they had maybe five children. And the size of the place they lived was maybe from here to maybe that wall in length, and maybe not even the size of this side of the masjid. It's much smaller than that. And I think that for him, us being students of the deen, never really asking what we can do for you. Fi ay khidma. Is there a way that we can help you? But going in and out of the masjid and coming, I think he regarded this with like some hypocrisy, like the nerve of you people. So whenever we would say, Assalamu alaikum to him, he would always respond, Salam barakatuh. I had never heard that before. He just, Salam barakatuh. And always purposely dismissive. Assalamu alaikum sama. Salam barakatuh. You know, almost like, man, get out of here, man. Salam barakatuh. Whatever, man. And I still remember my young, and then I thought to myself, astaghfirullah, I thought, well, maybe he just, you know, doesn't know how to kind of issue the salam with all of the grammatical. He just says salam barakatuh. I don't know. But I had my young daughter with me. And she walked out of the alley, and she's learning salam, and she says, Salamu alaikum. And he looked at her and said, Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I said, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa salam barakatuh. And it just made me think, what a beautiful greeting. But if you really don't intend salam for that person, like I'm saying salamu alaikum, but am I looking into your condition to see to it that you have some salam, that you have sufficient food, that you're well, that you're okay, to see if I can do something for you, then my salam is going to ring a little bit hollow. And when the salam is connected with a real desire for a person to have salam, then not only does it break ice, it can melt ice. And this is why he returned my daughter's salam. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Because you're not like them. All of these tulabul ilm going and coming, and you're not. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It really made me think about what we have to convey when we give salam. So that's the first thing. The second meaning that we can also benefit from as a community in terms of afshu salam, we should become peacemakers. In any setting in which we are active, first and foremost in our families, we have to become people that make peace, people that spread peace. We have an entire media dedicated to spreading strife, dedicated to spreading division, dedicated to spreading controversy. We have to offer something countervailing in that we want to be people that spread peace. We want to be people that spread togetherness, people that spread unity. I find it quite compelling that the Prophet ﷺ, in saying when it was permissible for a Muslim not to tell the truth, he said there are only 3 occasions in which it is okay for a Muslim not to tell the truth. The first of them is in military conflict, al-harbu khada'. Right? Just because we're Muslim, we don't say, hey, ready your reinforcements, we're attacking at 3 o'clock. No, we don't understand. We don't do that. The second is that it is okay for a spouse to tell a fib, we used to call them, but a lie to the spouse in order to protect their feelings. So that if the wife asks, mashallah, Subhan put a thumb on his picture, mashallah. If the wife asks, tell me the truth. Do you enjoy my cooking more than your mother's? The husband can say, ever since I married you, I don't even think about my mother's cooking. He can say that. If the husband asks, babe, I got an interview today. You know, I'm wearing my favorite, lime green suit. I look good in this, right? Oh, baby, you're going to knock it. You look good. You look, alhamdulillah. If you know he's actually dedicated to wearing the suit. If you can change his mind, change his mind. I don't know if lime green that's a little loud for the first interview. I wouldn't go with that. But if you know this is his thing and he wants to, you look great, mashallah. Or he says, I've been working out. Am I getting any results? Mashallah. Mashallah. I see something. I see something. No, I see some results. Even though she's thinking, I don't see anything. What are you doing at the gym? Are you spending all of your time at the smoothie bar? Are you actually working out? But she said, no, I see, no, mashallah, babe, I see some, okay, alhamdulillah. This is permissible. And the last thing is when making peace between people. Zayd can say to Amr, or I can say to Amr, I just talked to Zayd. He was telling me how much he misses you. He was telling me how he wishes that you would call him. He was telling me that, the time that you all spent together, this was some of the best time of his life. And he regrets the fact that you guys aren't on good terms. And then I could go to Amr and say, I was just talking to Zayd. He was telling me that he misses you. He was telling me how much he loves you. He was telling me he wishes you would call him. And when the two see each other, they're going to say, Ubayd told me what you said. What? Man, I didn't say anything like that. I would never say something like that about you. It was funny because Ubayd told me that you said some nice things about me. Oh, and they will notice you're trying to get them to reconcile. You're trying to bring their hearts back together. And if somebody from the outside is that concerned with our being at peace, we almost owe it to that person to actually return, to incline toward each other. This is permissible. This is the value that Islam places on spreading peace. That even so, it's so much of an emphasized value in our tradition that we can even say something that's not true to bring people back together. Right? The next thing the Prophet ﷺ was أَطْعِمُوا الطَّعَامِ, and feed people. Feeding people is also a means to spreading peace. Right? This is inni utitu jawami al-kalam. Truly, I have been given the most comprehensive speech. Because I'm telling you, I've been in the Muslim community. I've been Muslim now for almost 20 years, alhamdulillah. Which, if you didn't, I would say my normal joke, that means I converted when I was 2. But you heard me say 16. So you know that I'm going on 36 this year, alhamdulillah, if you can do math. So I've been Muslim for almost 20 years. And in that time, I can honestly say that I have seen nothing relieve tension and put to rest animosity like a good chicken biryani. Good maqlooba. People are sitting and they're eating. Good barbecue. Man, I heard about what you said about me. But this chicken, it makes it all okay. I really appreciate you inviting me, man. This is a means of spreading peace, but also sharing food is a means of demonstrating practical concern about people. And this is something that religious people don't always do. Sometimes we want to proselytize. We want to get out, whatever our movement is, we want to call people to that. We want people to become Muslim. But in terms of really caring about giving them something that is benefiting them practically, we could care less. I know people, and I've seen this. I'm not saying this to shame our community. I'm saying this to spur us into action. I've seen people going down to homeless shelters, not to give people clothing, to offer them mental health services, or to give them food, but just to give them pamphlets. Here, take this. And if somebody takes the shahada, they just leave. No concern about the fact that you're homeless. No concern about the fact that you're hungry. But, mashallah, I have moved one step closer to being relieved of my own doubt about Islam because somebody accepted it, and this is what I wanted from you. I've instrumentalized your shahada to help me get rid of my sheikh. But I really don't care about you. This is not the model of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I don't look at you as just another number that adds to our ranks. You're a human being about whom I'm concerned, whether you accept Islam or not. Now, the Islam, this is my responsibility to tell you about this man, Muhammad alayhi salam, and I have to do that. But in terms of me wanting to help you, it's not contingent on your accepting Islam. I want to help you because you're my brother in humanity. You're my sister in humanity. This is why I'm helping you. Telling you about Islam, this is just my responsibility. So feed people. We'll stop there, inshallah, because I can tell Tariq is he's very nervous. Tariq is he's very uncomfortable right now. We'll stop, inshallah. I can feel the khajl. We'll stop, and we'll go to Ustadha Zaynab, inshallah, and we'll resume with this hadith. She can finish it up, or we can resume with this hadith tomorrow, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله ولكم ولسائر المسلمين وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
All right, Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum. So I believe it's time for Q&A. Is that what we're going to do right now? Inshallah? Is that? Okay. Okay, so subhanAllah, I mean, Shaykh Ubaydullah covered this hadith really comprehensively, and it's true, there is the line, because I've got in my notes here about, connecting family ties, so that is part of the hadith. But I wanted to actually say a couple things about the narrator, right? Because this hadith that comes to us from Abdullah ibn Salam, just to give us a little background, is that okay? So his given name was actually Al-Hussein ibn Salam, and he was a rabbi from Bani Qaynuqa', which was one of the three main Jewish tribes in Medina, and he'd actually been studying the Torah, looking for sort of signs of the coming prophet and messenger. So, and this is one of the most fascinating companions, just in terms of his background, right? And so this is someone who is, again, avidly studying his own scripture in anticipation of this coming prophet and messenger. And there are several hadith where he's actually kind of describing this encounter, right, with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In one of the hadiths, he actually says that, he was kind of out because he would tend to his orchards. He had, I think, date palms and this type of thing, right? So he was actually tending to his orchard when he heard that the Prophet had arrived, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I think maybe in Quba. And he actually, this hadith to me is kind of interesting because it seems to suggest that Abdullah ibn Salam had actually decided to become Muslim even prior to meeting the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because when he heard of the Prophet's arrival, right, peace and blessings be upon him, he exclaimed to his aunt that someone is here, and he says, I think hadith says, he says Allahu Akbar, and he proclaims his shahada. His aunt's like, what's wrong with you? And Abdullah ibn Salam says, well, the person who's here is the brother of Moses. This is the brother of Musa who's arrived. It's a fascinating story. So Abdullah ibn Salam actually goes to meet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is where he hears the hadith that Shaykh Ubaydullah narrated. And this hadith comes to us in a few different collections. I found it in Ibn Majah and Tirmidhi. And but there's also apparently there's also a version of this in Bukhari, because what's so interesting is that in one particular version, in the first half of the hadith, Abdullah ibn Salam actually goes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and poses 3 questions, very kind of esoteric questions. And I'll defer to Shaykh Ubaydullah for the commentary, because they're very esoteric questions. And he says that only a prophet, only a messenger would know the answer to these 3 questions. So he asks the messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the prophet answers all 3 questions correctly, right? And then the prophet says to Abdullah ibn Salam, "What is your name?" He says, "Al-Hussein." He says, "Your name is now Abdullah." So he kind of gives him this name, right? And then the second part of the hadith is Abdullah ibn Salam goes back and he tells his family that that again, there's absolutely no way that someone like this person could, again, this is not the countenance, this is not the face of someone who lies, right? And then this is when he quotes, "Ya ayyuhan nas afshu salam wa ati'u ta'am wa silu al-arham wa sallu bil-layli wan nasu niyam tadkhulu al-jannah bis-salam." So it's a fascinating hadith, and I just kind of wanted to give you all that background, right? That he's just taken on an intellectual level, and spiritually, he's just really taken with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also one more thing about Abdullah ibn Salam, which I thought was so interesting. He narrates some fascinating ahadith, and another one he narrates is the hadith of Sa'at al-Ijaba fi Yawm al-Jum'ah, right? There's this hadith where Abdullah ibn Salam is asking the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Can you give me more detail about that hour or that time on Yawm al-Jum'ah, right? On Friday, where one's dua is answered." So just wanted to give you all that background. So I'm looking forward to the continuation of our discussion tomorrow, inshallah.
So we'll take, in these last 15 minutes here, sorry, Ahmed, we'll take a question from the brothers and from the sisters. We'll alternate for the next 15 minutes before we pray Aisha, inshallah. So we'll start on the sisters' side, since there's, well, at least in the beginning, there were a lot more sisters. I think the brothers came late. But do we,
as is custom?
do we have a question on the sister side, inshallah? On any of the topics that we've addressed? Anything that came to mind?
Okay, that was easy. Salam alaikum.
Nothing now. Okay, we'll come back to the sisters. How about on the brother's side? Anything?
Yes, there's a question there. Yes.
We'll repeat the question on the mic too, so go ahead.
I think you mentioned how you started looking at searching about Islam. But I'm not sure if you talked about what made you interested from the beginning, or how you heard about Islam.
So the question was, what sparked your interest in Islam initially?
There's so many. My wife jokes that every time I tell the story, I tell a different version of the story. And I say that, all of the riwayat are sahiha. All of them are authentic. It's just that there was the confluence of so many different things going on. I think I was, it's a complex story. I'm from Chicago, which is still the headquarters of the Nation of Islam. So I was very familiar with Muslims in terms of, people that said they were Muslim, and they wore bow ties, and they sold bean pies, and they sold papers, and they were strong advocates for black people. So I benefited from this historical relationship between this proto-Islamic movement, is how I like to refer to it, and the African-American kind of historical narrative, so that I could look upon Islam and see it as something that was mine. I did not feel that I was culturally apostating, like I have to stop being black in order to be Muslim. That is kind of the larger context. And then inside that context, I think it was the autobiography of Malcolm X. It was once I was in Saturday detention. I'm not going to tell you why I was there. Again, this class is about transformation. Transformation, akhi, transformation. You know, I was a kid. I liked to fight. When I was a kid, I used to fight a lot. If you said something about me, I would fight. I was a person I liked to fight. So I was in Saturday detention, presumably for fighting. And I was sitting there, like, purposely looking bored. Like, my proctor, his name was Mr. DeVries. I pray for Mr. DeVries now, actually. I was just trying to look bored, just, how children try to just, like, look like clearly they're demonstrating their boredom, And he came to me and he gave me a world civilizations book. It wasn't a course that I was taking. But he said, just busy yourself with something. Read this. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have it, I opened the book to the chapter on the Ottoman Empire. I just started reading, looking at it. And there was a small inset on Ottoman religious life. And so they had to talk about Islam. And the caption on the top of that page was, "There is no God but God." And even though I knew something about Islam, I was familiar with Malcolm X, the movie, the book, there was something about that like got my attention. The statement seemed so counterintuitive, like there is no God but God. Now, if it was translated, "There's no God but Allah," I don't think it would have sparked my interest in the same way. But because they said there is no God but God, I said, what? No God but what? And I started reading, and they had a very short paragraph about Tawheed. Muslims believe in a God that is one, a God that is indivisible, absolutely incomparable, unique. He has no children, no consort. And I remember thinking to myself, man, that sounds so, it was like the simple beauty of truth. I read it and said, man, that sounds good to me. That's how I remember my feeling about that. Now, these are non-Muslim writers, presumably, just writing almost in an encyclopedic way about Islam. But when I read that, I said, man, that feels good. Indivisible, incomparable, no children, no consort, unique, transcendent, but immanent. I said, wow, man, that sounds good to me. And so I wanted to learn more about Islam. And so I started, researching, and alhamdulillah, I became Muslim. Alhamdulillah, I became Muslim. But and if my wife was here, she'd say, that's not what you said last time. There's other parts of the story too.
You mentioned the miswak and the kufi.
Yeah, well, then so I had a Nigerian classmate named Siraj. And Siraj had this peculiar habit of not eating lunch for some weeks throughout the year. He'd come to the lunch table, but he wouldn't eat. He would just sit there. And he was actually a portly kind of kid. So we would make fun of him. Why aren't you? We know you eat sometime. Look at you. You can't fool us by not eating lunch. And we used to pick on him. But when I was reading about Islam, I read about Ramadan. And something said to me, maybe Siraj is not eating lunch because he's fasting for this, I didn't say Ramadan, but Ramadan or something. So I went to him and I said, Siraj, are you Muslim? He's like, now, in addition to fighting, I was the man with the jokes. I'm talking about if you came to school and you had anything in your outfit that wasn't right, I was lighting you up. I was that kid waiting for you at the door. What are those? No, I was that kid. So when I first asked him, Siraj, are you Muslim? He was apprehensive. Like, is this a setup for a joke? He said, yeah, why? I said, because I know you don't eat sometime. Are you fasting for Ramadan? He's like, yeah. How did you know that? I said, well, I've been reading encyclopedia. Another thing that kids don't know, what is that? We used to have these things called encyclopedias that you would keep in your home. I got to tell you about it sometime. So I said, can you tell me something about Islam? And he said, and this is why we have to teach our children, because they also can be du'at. He said, I really don't know a lot about Islam. It's just something my dad tells me to do. I said, because I was, mashallah, I was pressing, I said, well, can you introduce me to your father? Because I want someone to tell me something about Islam. And he said, okay, well, come by the house maybe after school. So I went by his house. His father, his name was Hakim. He just passed away, Allah yarhamu. And his father, very gentle man. The first thing he asked me, what does your mother think about this? You learning about it. I said, no, my mother, mashallah, my mother is a chemist by trade. And my mother's a very open-minded person, a crackling smart woman. My mother's very intelligent. And she encouraged us to read all sorts of things, right? And so I said, my mother, she's open. She just likes me to explore, to read. She would have no reservation about you telling me about Islam. So he talked to me for about 10 minutes. And I was literally, this is not figurative, leaping out of my seat. Every time he said something about the Prophet ﷺ or Allah, I was like, that's true, that's true, that's true. That is true, that is true, that is true. And I said, I wanna become a Muslim. I want to convert to this religion right now. I'm 16 years old. He said, you sure? And so he gave me my shahada right there in his kitchen. Alhamdulillah. And when I converted, he gave me two things. He gave me a kufi, a topi, and a miswak. And I thought that these were like the sacred relics of Islam. And I would carry them with me everywhere I went. No matter what the kufi, I would just have it in my pocket. And I would sometimes see people that I thought were like Muslim looking. And I would say, I too am a Muslim. Because I didn't know anything, And they would say, you are? And I would pull out the topi. How did I get this? Clearly, I'm Muslim. And they'd be like, really? Then I would pull out the miswak. You think anybody just walks around with a stick in their pocket? Yes, I'm Muslim. And it was actually one of those people that I met that told me about the Jummah that I told you guys about that I attended. Said, they have Jummah at this place called the AIA, and you should go down there and check it out. And that's kind of like how I became Muslim. Alhamdulillah. MashaAllah.
From the sisters, any questions?
Yes.
So what would you recommend, or if somebody just became a Muslim, what is the first thing that you would recommend them to start going to the websites and stuff? And also if they are kind of a little bit scared of going to the masjid that they don't know anything about, what is the first place you can send them or something you tell them to do so they become more comfortable and know more a little bit about the religion?
So the question, just for those watching online, was what is the first resource to give new Muslims to learn, or the first thing they should do when they first become Muslim on learning about Islam, especially if they may be hesitant to go to the masjid or frightened to go to a masjid?
Ustadha Zaynab, you want to take that? No, please.
Bismillah. I think that to answer your question, sister, I think I would kind of take it, on a case-by-case basis, because, I have encountered people who have that sort of reluctance, that anxiety, whatever it is, to actually go to the masjid. But what I would say is that if they are hesitant to go to the masjid, at the very least, that they need to befriend, right? I don't know what the details of this case are, but they need to befriend someone who is a Muslim, simply because there are certain pitfalls, I think, associated with gleaning all of our Islam, say, from a book, or in the case of today, the internet. It's very hard to separate the wheat from the chaff, right? If we're online. And again, back to the point that Shaykh Ubaydullah was making, and that I said earlier, that how were people transformed, right? They were transformed by having that direct interaction with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or sitting with one of the companions, right? So this idea of faith and suhbah, faith and companionship, friendship, it's very, very important. So I would just say that person should take baby steps, and part of that should be, again, befriending and keeping company with somebody who is a little bit longer and stronger in their faith. Just practically speaking, in terms of learning how to pray and how to make wudu and these kinds of things. And also I would actually like to sort of, if I were in your shoes, I would want to kind of get to the bottom of where is this anxiety coming from. The masjid is, it's not anything to be afraid of. I think sometimes I think because people are concerned they don't have the right etiquette or adab or this type of thing, or they don't know the protocol, they get, and I think it's really, really important to convey to that person that you're going to find many different people in the masjid along sort of a spectrum of practice of Islam. You're going to maybe come to the masjid and find people who are new in their own journey of learning. So there should be nothing to fear in that regard. But again, for me, I would say it's very important to have consistent companionship and association with somebody who can teach them, right, the ways of this new faith. That's very, very, very important.
And also, I just want to add to that by saying, and also for us, suhbah, we cannot underestimate the importance or the value of keeping company with good people. Sometimes, people, they come to me and they say, Ubayd, mashallah, your faith seems to have persisted over the years. What do you do when you're really at a low point? Because we know the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Iman yazidu wa yanqus. Faith, it goes up and it goes down. And I said, akhi man, it's not, alhamdulillah, reading the Mus'haf always reconnects me. It always nourishes me. But it's not simply that. And it's not, studying, i'tiqadat, studying aqidah, studying creed. Sometimes it's simply reflecting on the fact that the best human beings I know are Muslims. The best human beings I know, the best women and men I know are Muslims. And sometimes that is enough to fortify my faith. I think about them and I say, you know what? I'm having a moment right now, but if those people became like they are because of following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, there must be good in that. There must be good in that. So it's not just for even new Muslims, it's for all of us to be sure that we keep company with people that inspire us. The Prophet ﷺ said, when it comes to the affairs of the dunya, look to people that have less than you. But when it comes to the affairs of the akhirah, look to people that have been given more than you. And it's amazing that I think we've inverted that. We spend our time watching reality TV, and in spite of the fact that this is a reality show, nobody's working. Nobody's working. The reality consists of being filmed and attending parties. I'm thinking, whose reality is that? This is reality TV. Nobody goes to work. It's just people being filmed walking around. And we long for their lives. Look at what they have. Look at how glamorous they look. All of these filters through which you see the people. Right? We spend our time hanging out with these people, and then we look at our own lives as being unsatisfactory, uninspiring. Then when it comes to the akhirah, we look at the least common denominator. Well, at least I'm not beating my wife. What? At least I try to pray 3 prayers a day. At least I make 3. At least I'm not on drugs. It's like, no, you invert that. When it comes to the dunya, look to people that have less than you so that you can say, thank God, Ya Rabbul Alameen, for all that I have been given. Look at all of the blessing I enjoy that I'm not grateful for. And when it comes to akhirah, look at those awliya, look at those men and women that are friends of God and say, man, how could I ever aspire to be like them? This is what we have to do. This is important for all of us, mashallah. And Allah knows best. Allah knows best. I guess we'll take one more from the brothers, inshallah. Yes, I think. Well, I know you're Tariq's younger brother. Should we still give him the privilege? People might think it's nepotism.
This won't count. It's a quick question.
People might think, oh, it's nepotism. No, it's okay. Bismillah. Yes, actually, it's actually my. He said that my mom became Muslim. What's interesting is that my sister is 3 years younger than me, so she was 13 when I became Muslim, and she came to me and she said, "Hey, Will," which is my given name. My given name is Will. If you call me by that name, I'll think either you went to grade school with me or you're in my family. So be prepared for a hug if you call me Will. And I'm going to fake it too. Will, what's that? It's been so long since I see you. Because only certain people call me Will. And so my sister said, Will, people are saying that you became Muslim. And I said, my sister's name is Portia. I said, yeah, this is true. She said, well, I can't let you do it without me. And my sister became a Muslim just like that. We got to do this together, you know what I'm saying? Two peas in a pod, you know what it is? We got to do this together. So my sister became Muslim. My grandmother, mashallah, she became Muslim. My grandfather became Muslim, alhamdulillah. 3 of my best friends, they became Muslim. My mother has a very interesting relationship with Islam. I want to say that. It's unique. In one conversation, you hear hallelujahs, mashallahs, praise the Lord, alhamdulillah, inshallah. It's very unique, but she did take her shahada, alhamdulillah. And I pray that Allah helps all of my friends and family, and me especially, to deepen our faith, inshallah, and our commitment, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. Yes, one more question, inshallah. Yes.
For someone like who learns religion based on their family, like for example, someone's parents were Muslims and they become Muslims, and then when someone then grows and then you see outside world and you see different things, and since you have not learned this faith on your own and maybe this faith in you is not as strong, then you see different things. It at times might happen that your faith getting weakened, and then you get distracted. So how to in a way prevent that thing?
Bismillah. You want to repeat this?
So I think the question was, if you grew up in a Muslim family, and then you're here in America and you're seeing so many different ways of life, so many different beliefs, and sometimes it weakens your iman, how do you deal with that and strengthen it in your belief and your practice?
Funny story. And I've told this story many times. At this point, if I was telling the story, my wife would roll her eyes at me again. But I was in Cairo. That's where I did my training. And I walked into this barber shop. And I was watching the barber to see if I wanted him to cut my hair. Now, I know you're thinking, the degree of difficulty on my haircut is very low. And you would be right in assuming that. But I'm still very particular about the way it's done. It's just a holdover from the days of my youth. I'm like, no, you can't cut my hair. You're not good enough. First, like, it's really nothing to do. No. I don't like the way you do it. I like the way you hold the razor. No, you can't cut my hair. So I'm watching this barber, and I'm watching how he, performs the haircut. And I noticed that he's good. So then the trick became, okay, how do I try to trick him that I'm from Sa'id Masr? That I'm from southern Egypt? Because if he knows that I'm American, the price of the haircut will double. So I try my best, some دارغة يعني لسه بالكام كذا يعني شو. But at some point اللغة العربية الفصحى تغلب يعني على الأسلوب في الكلام. It just comes, it's just certain things, it just comes out that you speak classical Arabic. So he stopped and said, "Enter min fain. Where are you from?" And I was thinking, oh no. He knows that I'm not Egyptian, you know what I'm saying? I tried my best to kind of affect an Egyptian, accent, but it didn't work. So at this point, knowing that my cover was blown, I just said to him, "Khammin, guess." Now we're speaking Fusha. Khammin, yani, you guess. And he said, oh, I know where you're from. I said, you do? He said, yep. Senegal. I said, no. I said, I'm not from Senegal. I said, I'm from somewhere west of Senegal. He said, there's something west of Senegal? There's nothing west of Senegal. And I said, no, there's something west of Senegal. He said, where are you from? I said, America. He said, America Chica Bica. A true story. And he said, if you're from America, I have one question for you. And I'm thinking he's going to ask me about, Israel and Palestine, or American foreign policy, the war in Iraq, the war in Iraq. I said, what's that? He said, Obama. Muslim or wala la'a? Muslim or not? And I said, Obama, he's not Muslim. He's not Muslim. By his own testimony, he's a Christian. He said, walakin ismu Hussein. But his name is Hussein. Mafish Masihi bi ism Hussein. There's no such thing as a Christian with the name Hussein. And I said, he came from his father came from a Muslim family in Kenya. But after some time at university, at Jamia, influenced by the ideals of radical socialism, he eventually became a communist, shuyu'i. وَبَعْدَ ذَلك أَصْبَحَ مُلْحِدًا. And after that, he became an atheist. His father, Obama's father. And when I said mulhid, he said, mulhid? Ish mulhid? Mulhid, what is a mulhid? This man had never, this was just a man in the street in Cairo. He had never heard the term atheist before in his life. Atheist? What is that? Mulhid? What is mulhid? And I explained to him what an atheist was. And he looked at me like, you mean to tell me there are actually people like that? I said, yes. He could not believe it. Now, what I found deep is that he didn't say anything about their salvation, or he said, so what do they do when a baby is born? How do they get married? What holidays do they celebrate? He could not imagine life without the social cohesion and community given to life by religious community. He could not imagine life without that. He's Egyptian. He could not imagine life without that. And when I explained to him atheism was prevalent in Western Europe, beginning to spread in America, even spreading in the Arab world a little bit, he said, no, not in the Arab world. No. He's in denial, right? No, this is not true. But then he thought about it. And he said, Subhanallah, Rabbi ahsan al-khaliqeen. He said, praise be to my Lord. He is the best of creators. And I said, what makes you say that? He said, my Lord must be azim if he can create and sustain people who don't even believe in him. And I said to myself, that's beautiful. This is someone, he didn't do any implicit bias training at Harvard. He didn't take sensitivity courses. This is just a man with a Quranic view of the world. And when he sees diversity, something as radically different from Islam as atheism, it reinforces his belief in the greatness of his creator. How do we get to that? He sees something, it's like, Subhanallah, my Lord is azim. His khalq is amazing. There are people that don't even believe in God. That's amazing. And this became not something that made him uncomfortable. Wait, if there are people like that, what does that mean for my tradition? This is something that deepened his commitment to Islam, deepened his devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is how we have to be. When I see people, and mashallah, I get to travel college campuses throughout the country. So I meet people that believe all sorts of things and nothing at all. And I'm always thinking, mashallah, laqad karamna bani Adam. Allah has ennobled the men and women that are children of Adam because he has given us the ability to contemplate these great questions. Some of us arrive at the correct conclusion. Inshallah, we pray that our iman persists. Some of us arrive at different conclusions. But the fact that God has given us the ability to think about these things and to choose, this is the karama. This is the miraculous thing that we're still thinking about this. And I think that you have to have a view of Islam and a view of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is broad, not frustrated by diversity, not frustrated by difference, no, reinforced by diversity. That's what I'll never forget. That was one of the most beneficial things I experienced in Cairo, and it was just a barber. I said, man, it's a simple man, but his faith is deepened by thinking about, wow, there are people in creation very different than me. My Lord is the best of creators. That's how I want to be. And that's how I think we have to educate our children to be. And Allah knows best, inshallah. Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair. Just a quick reminder, inshallah, for anyone watching online that's watching the free live stream. If you want to continue watching tomorrow, you can just go to celebratemercy.com/content and register to view Saturday's program, inshallah, online. I definitely want to thank all of our teachers, and Shaykh Hassan will be joining tomorrow, inshallah, for their time. It's always difficult to travel away from family or to spend time away from family and preparing for these sessions too. Jazakumullah khair to all the people who helped. I want to also note there's a couple of board members who are board members of Celebrate Mercy that are with us. I think, is Ubayd still here? He had to leave.
I'm here.
Many people don't know this, but Brother Ubayd Rahman, Dr. Ubayd Rahman, is also on the board of Celebrate Mercy, and he may have had to leave early due to his family. But we also have Dr. Zishan Tayyib. Do you mind raising your hand, Zishan? Who's visiting us from Cincinnati. And Brother Subhan, do you mind coming in for a second here? There's also people who have been on our team that are not here. Sister Samar, Malik, Sister Hasna Al-Ghuzul. This is Brother Subhan, who manages our events from behind the scenes, mashallah. He's the newest part of our team. And we also have Sister Afifa in Toronto, and Brother Qutub, who now is in California. So all these people really do a lot of work to put this together, and your local volunteer team on the ground. Jazakumullah khair. And inshallah, we will see you tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning. So that is 11 and a half hours from now, inshallah. So make sure to get enough sleep. As you saw, there's a lot to unpack in just one hadith that we didn't even finish. But there's 9 more tomorrow. It'll be a really beautiful time, a lot of beautiful stories and lessons. So we'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. I'll just ask Ustadha Ubaydullah to end us with a closing dua, inshallah. Okay, please. To end us with a closing dua, and then we'll go ahead and pray Isha, inshallah.
ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب اللهم أعنا على دوام ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام وإليك يعود السلام فحينا يا ربنا بالسلام وأدخلنا دار السلام تباركت وتعاليت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين إلى شرف النبي وآله الفاتحة